Okay, so we are going to start with the first layer of color on the skin tone. So that's what we'll concentrate on today, just the actual face. And then we'll let that dry, and then we'll do pretty much the rest of it. The reason why we're doing that is because usually the face is going to take 2 layers of color. So we've got now our umber tonal underpainting right now completely dry to the touch. And then we're going to use colors that might be counterintuitive for people, but the colors that I have mixed up on my palette, I've got either a Venetian red or I have Indian red actually, which is the same tone basically, but it's slightly cooler. So that's what the Indian red looks like, mixed with a little bit of yellow ochre. It might even be close to half and half, the yellow ochre and the Indian red. And then the other colors that I have are yellow ochre mixed with white. It's going to look like this. And I also have a cad red light on my palette, which you know what that looks like, so I don't need to show it to you. And I also have a pink mixed up with the cad red light and white. Okay, so these are the 3 colors that we're going to mainly be dealing with today. I don't think I'm going to need an umber, but it's possible that I'll need to get an umber to restate some things once I've painted on top of this. But the main thing that people need to understand about the lights, or the things that throws people off, is that when we start, we're painting the light areas of the face, we're going to paint those much darker than they actually are to start with. Okay, so we are going to be using our the mixture of the Indian red or the Venetian red. And if you don't have Venetian red and you don't have the Indian red, you can mix up a cadmium red light with the yellow ochre at about equal tones, and you'll get something that'll approximate this. So it's not that big of an issue if you don't have it, but it's probably best to have the Venetian red. If you're going to go out and buy it for this, then go buy the right thing. So I'm putting the Indian red or the Venetian red in the ochre mixture on the light areas thin. I'm not putting them on the shadow areas. And you see this is dark, and so this is what always freaks students out. It's funny the things that freak students out, but this is one of them. You can see what that yellow ochre looks like if it went just on top by itself. It would be way too kind of green and kind of pale. I don't know if I'm real careful on this, so I'm just going to quickly put it in, and I actually overlap the edge of that a little bit, so that's still not a big deal. Even on the shadow side where I have my lights. This is a 6 sable round I'm using. You are going to be using the softer brushes today. You don't want to go too thin because you have to have some of this color, mixing with the color that's going to go on top of it. This is like when we did, most of you that had me for beginning painting, you got to do the fruit painting, which is the same technique. The only thing that's different is we're not painting fruit. So there's all the areas that I'm going to have the light in there. And then the brush I'm going to be using for a blender is a sable round that has been messed up because, they get this way. And I'm going to just take that and spread it out thinner. And that's going to get dragged into some of the shadow areas. That I'm going to have to hit again. So kind of using a form following. I don't need to worry about the outside edges getting, into the blue, because that blue is going to get painted over. Some places I missed. So in here, a little bit of white. Here, that's way too thick. Now, areas of more intense color. So around the lips, for example, I'm just going to add little touches of red around the eyes, oftentimes in the ears, oftentimes in the nose. This is just so that I can get a little bit more punch in the color. That ear shadow side, so I probably don't need to do it there. On my light side, I still want to go a little bit thicker on that red. Then on the lights areas, I'm going to be going over first with the yellow, ochre, and white. And that's going to be opaque. So the one that we did before, that was a lot of the actual medium. And here we're going to go ahead and put in hatching strokes, the yellow, ochre, and white. Form following. So if you remember when we did the fruit painting, right? We were painting, bringing up the light areas and letting the shadow just be the shadow. We're ultimately going to get what you see here is going to be in pretty much all the shadow as we move along. And as I said before in the demo for the fruit painting, that this technique, this is Titian's painting technique in the Venetian Renaissance. So what he talks about is having 30 to 40 layers of paint, repeating this 30 to 40 times, which the most I have done on a portrait, I think, is probably 4. I don't do 40 layers. But if I had a big painting like Titian, then that might be the case. And it doesn't mean that you're necessarily painting the same areas over 30 to 40 times. Okay, now I'm using the blending brush. And again, I'm blending this form following strokes. I'm hitting some of these light areas that I missed before. On the shadow side. On the shadow side, we're going to do something a little bit different. So you can see how thin this paint layer is. Something I say all the time in painting. Probably true in life. You can always get thicker. You can always get thicker with the paint. Once you go too thick, it's a hard thing to deal with. And you're probably asking yourself, could we have taken this thin red, gone over the whole painting, shadow and all, and then just smoothed it out? Would that work? Yeah, probably work. Okay, now the different thing I'm going to do now is instead of using the yellow, ochre, and white for the lights, I'm going to use instead an opaque, thick pink. And the reason for that is that the pink, even though we think of the red, the cadmium red light, as being really a hot or warm red, it is still not as warm as yellow. Yellow is warmer. So in the light areas of the shadow, we're going to be using this pink. Probably on the ears too, for sure on this ear. The other good thing about going real light with your paint layer, or real thin with your paint layer, is that it allows you to use less paint. Now on the shadows, because this is technically on light side of the face, but it's still within the recessed area of the eye socket, we are going to use the pink in there too. Every time I go to put that pink on there, if I notice a spot that I didn't get that red on, I'm going to need to make sure that I hit that with the red first. So this gets it with the blender too. Constantly softening our transitions. I don't have to be real worried at this stage about matching the color exactly, because that will come as we progress. So you can see I'm starting to cover up that nostril, so I'm going to have to go back into that, probably with the umber at some point. So in case you're wondering about why am I painting this person and why is he posed this way? He's not a glum fellow, let me put it that way. He's a happy guy. But it was for a series I was doing where I was using my students as models, and they had to, I told them I wanted them to have no expression on their face. And the funny thing was that, so you can see how that red now is kind of starting to pick up. That's looking more intense. It might not stay that way, but at this point in time, you can see how intense that is. The funny thing is that when I exhibited those paintings, the several times I've exhibited them, I've had people commenting about how you can tell the person's personality coming through, even when they're not supposed to have any personality at all coming through. Now I'm going to go on top of my yellow ochre and white with a lighter yellow ochre and white. So more white, less yellow ochre. And I'm going on those lightest areas. It doesn't look like I blended that. So remember with the painting that we did of the fruit, we were going from dark to light, working to our lightest areas. If you use the red, cadmium red and the yellow ochre mixed together instead of the Venetian red, you're going to get something a little bit more, turning a little bit more towards the orange. It'll look a lot like that color probably. Okay, so you can kind of see how this is going to go. It won't take too much longer for me to get this to a point where I can stop. Whenever I say that, it's always like, 2 hours later. But so we'll finish doing the face today, and then next time we will be doing the clothing and the hair, and probably do something in the background that I'm probably going to wipe away. In fact, let's do it now. See how easy it is to correct a mistake? Okay, so we'll go to speed up mode, and you'll see this get done. You'll see how the red works with the yellow ochre to make it, the believable flesh tone. How we'll get, lighter by adding more layers to it. And then you'll see how that will be a base for what we're going to do next time. The reason why we wanted to get one layer of flesh color on here, like I said before, is that we are going to probably hit, especially the light areas, a second time, just to bring up the richness. The painting itself is going to be more dimensional than the photograph is, okay? Because the photograph, with photography, and this is an older photograph too, so it's starting to get a little bit faded. But as you're using these form-following strokes, the painting will get more dimensional looking, so more like reality than actually the photograph itself. Okay, so now we'll go to speed up.